We're back to the Neil Haley Show in the Total Celebrity segment. And this guy has really hit two huge shows. And I think he's, as an actor, he probably feels how lucky he is. But now we're going to talk about something that really interests me, this new, what he's starring in, The Terror on AMC. One reason is because my dad was in the Naval Academy. And so I'm really excited to welcome to the program Jared Harris, and he's going to talk about The Terror. Jared, thanks for calling. How are you?
Thank you for having me on. I'm doing well, thank you.
Absolutely, Jared. Let's go back to now thinking about your experience on Mad Men and now The Crown. How lucky you are being in such amazing shows like you have been cast in.
It's absolutely true. It's a good time at the moment, in terms of there was a while there where it was pretty hard to find good material because, largely the new model hadn't taken effect yet, but I think largely to do with a lot to do with the streaming platforms and the size of the budgets and the idea that television now is gearing their content towards adults and towards people who've had an experience of life. So the material is pretty challenging, which is great.
It definitely seems like the material is challenging, Jared, and it's like now the new platforms give opportunities to shows that might never have been on if there was not as many platforms now. But I think it really makes the big three understand, look out, all these talented actors are going other places, and it really opens up the field for great stories.
I think you're absolutely right. The opportunities for character and for narrative and for taking risks, those are being taken by television now, by the likes of AMC and HBO and Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and all these other platforms. And largely the studios are sort of focusing on a much younger audience, and they have different problems because of the size of their films, and that it needs to be a slightly more generic experience. This is actually a good time. I mean, people talk about the golden age of television, and I don't think that's hyperbole. I think it's absolutely true.
I think it's a golden age of any opportunity for a producer or director to really make their mark and use their creativity and allow certain topics that might not have gone on the air. And that's fantastic, and that's great for acting because it's an art that people love. Now, Jared, interesting, I talked about my dad being in the Naval Academy. He was on submarines and stuff. He was a graduate of the Naval Academy in 1949, so he's told me these stories. So let's talk about The Terror and the movie and also your character, Jared.
So The Terror is it's a 10-part anthology series, which means that it's there are no hanging chads after the 10th episode. You will know. All questions will be answered. It is a complete story. It is based on Dan Simmons' book, The Terror. And Dan Simmons took this very well-known maritime mystery about the Franklin Expedition and what happened to the Franklin Expedition. Nobody really knows what happened to it. And he took this story and he sort of wove a genre element around it, a supernatural horror element around the story, and it's a fictional account of what may have happened to this expedition. And it's a cautionary tale, if you like, about imperialism and about colonial expansion. And so what happens is in 1845, the map of the world is incomplete. There are literally uncharted places still left on the planet, and one of them is a mythical passage called the Northwest Passage, which is a route between the Atlantic and the Pacific. And it's attractive because it would cut trade routes between Britain and China by many, many, many months. So they send these two ships off to try and find it. They go into the Arctic Circle in 1845 with 130 men aboard, and they are never heard from again. This is like I said, it's kind of an adventure story. It's a survival story. It's a psychological terror, psychological horror story, if you like. A little bit monster story. But the biggest monsters in the story are the human monsters.
Have you ever played somebody in the Navy before, Jared?
I have. actually. Well, not in the Navy. Sorry, in the Navy. Yeah, I mean, interesting. George VI was, of course, he was commander of the forces, so he used to like to dress up in his admiral's uniform, but he wasn't specifically. He had been in the Navy, to tell you the truth. He'd fought in the First World War in the Battle of Jutland. And let's see, Captain Mike in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Not quite in the Navy, but he does, he does engage a German U-boat. He do battle with the Germans in that one. Yes, I think that's about it.
So you're used to playing like high-ups, being Captain Francis. You basically, guess what? You're pretty much a big part of that ship going and whatever happens to it, right? Because you're the captain, correct?
My character, Francis Carozzi, is second in command.
Yeah.
He is the most experienced polar explorer of the officers, but his advice goes largely unheeded. Although he's British, he's not English enough. He's Irish, and they ignore him. They ignore his advice to everybody's cost of it, which becomes apparent quite quickly. And as a result, he has a pretty big chip on his shoulder. He has isolated himself off. He's become a bit of an island, if you like. And of course, the change in that mentality and that mindset is one of the journeys of the show, of the 10 parts. I don't want to give too much away.
No, we don't. I don't. And
there are a lot of surprises and a lot of things that happen on the show.
So you think, Jared, this is going to be another winner? It sounds like very, very interesting, and you.
I hope so. I mean, right now it's been very satisfying. We've got an incredible. We've been doing the press tour now for the past 2 weeks, and we've been getting a really good response from people about the show. They've understood the show. I mean, they've seen it and liked it, enjoyed it, and got it on its own terms. It isn't. It's not sensational in the sense that it starts out at its own pace. It's patient in the beginning, but very quickly it starts to ramp up, and essentially, the stakes get higher and higher from episode to episode.
All right, well, fantastic. Best place we can find information on you and stuff like that, Jarrett. Are you on social media and stuff? And everyone needs to definitely check out The Crown.
I am. I'm on Twitter at Jared Harris. And then you can find out information about the show. I think that the AMC have their own Twitter handle for this, The Terror AMC.
All right, premieres again today, 10 at
tonight.
Tonight.
At 9 o'clock.
9.
Two episodes season premiere. And
yes.
then there's another 8 more episodes.
Oh, and everyone can always catch up.
Play out Monday.
And they all can catch up as well, Jared. Thanks for taking the time, and I appreciate it. Okay.
God bless you.
You too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. You're listening to Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
You are already at 10. Imagine the possibilities with me at your side.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show in the Total Celebrity segment, and I'm excited about this guest to kind of reminisce in certain ways because of the topic. And it's not involving drugs and a bunch of different things, but how I met my wife. I have a story, but I'm excited to welcome the program. First of all, Kristen Casey, author of And this is really good. Rock Monster, My Life with Joe Walsh. Kristen, thanks for calling, Kristen. And I have a story for you before we get into the interview about the Eagles and stuff to kind of start us off. How are you?
Oh, great.
Okay. My wife and I
I'm
met.
doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. But really what's interesting is that my wife and I met during the song Hotel California at a piano bar. I was bouncing and she came up to me. So it's a pretty interesting story, to say the least, to how we met. So I wanted to bring that up before we got into the interview.
That's a great story. Yeah. That's an awesome song to meet your wife to. You'll never forget it.
You never will. And it's such an interesting thing. And that's the kind of stories that these amazing artists are able to provide in so many ways. So tell us, Kristen, first of all, how you met Joe. And that's going to be an interesting, everyone's, I'm sure, interested in how you guys met.
It is kind of a funny story. I was working in Austin. I was a 20-year-old stripper, and I worked with a friend named Vicky. And Vicky was really into rock and roll. You know, she knew all the bands, and she'd gone to a million concerts. And she had met Joe's bass player, Rick. Rick, the bass player, had recently passed away, and she was dating him, and he would fly her around the country on, you know, when they were on tour. So the guys came through Austin, where I lived, and they were staying in a hotel. They had a gig the next day, and Vicky asked me for a ride after work. And I'd never heard, I think she might have said, you know, I want you to, I'm dating Joe Walsh's bass player. But that didn't mean anything to me. I was into punk rock and new wave, and
right.
I knew some rock songs, but not band names. So I gave her a ride, and then she invites me up to meet him, which I think was kind of a sly fix-up. Like, she didn't tell me that was the plan all along. So I thought, I'll go meet this guy, spend 15 minutes, be polite, then go home and go to bed. And 15 minutes later, I was in love. And so I stayed till 8 a.m.
Wow! Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
So
for me, it was like love at first
yeah.
sight.
So what did Joe think specifically of your profession and stuff when you guys first met? I guess because his bass player was already dating your friend. Was that strange for him, or were you thinking when you were in love with him that he was really going to be, or it was like a one-night stand and I'm going to a next town? Were you concerned about that at that point, or not at all?
You know, Joe was never a really judgy or judgmental person. I don't think he had. I don't think he thought it was super cool or unappealing that I was a stripper. Like, I think what Joe liked about me was that I was just very independent, and I seemed sort of strong-willed, and that's true. You know, I had just recently overcome a meth addiction, and I think that he liked that because he wanted a strong woman in his life who wouldn't end up getting addicted like I did. But, you know, we didn't understand addiction then the way we do now. So, yeah, he wasn't very judgmental or anything about the stripping thing.
So interesting, that drug addiction. No, that's definitely what I wanted to know, of how he felt about that. And he wasn't judgmental. But what about also your addiction? Did you mention to that the first night you met that you had a problem with drugs?
I did, in fact, yeah, because, you know, I was hanging out with him and Rick and Vicky, and Joe offered me some Coke out of the blue, and I said, no, thanks. And he just looked so surprised when I did that, so I felt like I better explain why I'm not doing it. I didn't want to be rude, I guess. I don't know what I was thinking at 20, but I said, you know, I had a problem with meth a couple years back at a brief stint where I was severely addicted to meth because, you know, meth can really get away from you quickly. So over the course of 6 months, I overcame it and quit it entirely. But I did have a drinking problem. You know, I had a substance abuse issues from the age of like 16 on. And so I thought I was going to be able to get my drinking under control. I didn't realize that it was already, you know, I was probably already an alcoholic. But Joe knew that I had a problem with meth, and then I didn't do any Coke with him for months into our relationship. But eventually I thought I'll do a little, and then it got away from me.
Was it the stress, Kristen, especially when you were traveling with him and seeing how many women wanted him and being part of that just ride in so many ways that you went back to an addiction of, you already were alcoholic addiction, but the drugs as well?
You know, it's funny. I don't think, I'd like any woman, like any girlfriend. I was jealous if I found out he had cheated on me or if I thought that he was flirting or paying too much attention to a woman, but not too much more than the average woman, I would say. I actually had a more philosophical view about relationships and monogamy, sort of big picture. I wasn't always able to embrace that, but I don't think that the stress of touring was really as much my issue as it was that I didn't really have a strong identity. I wanted to be a writer, but I hadn't really written much. And Joe had this really, huge persona, and it was so much easier to just base my identity on as a rock star girlfriend versus really making my own way in the world.
Right, exactly.
He was willing to put me through college and support my writing, and yet I was so afraid of failure. I would rather just hang out with him, do blow, travel around the world, meet celebrities, and that would be my life. And I think that that's a real pitfall that not just rock star girlfriends, but a lot of people fall into. Right. They base their identity on their partner because it's easier than making your own way in the world. And that was my problem.
Why did you guys break up, Kristen? What was the reason you broke up?
Well, the first time we broke up, it was because we were fighting so much. My addictions had spiraled to the point that I was a crackhead, a total crackhead.
Oh, no.
And, he was... Yeah, and he was an alcoholic and a coke addict, and we didn't communicate well. We had no real coping skills. We loved each other, but we fought all the time, and it was getting dangerous. I got violent with him one time. He got violent with me one time. A lot of stuff got broken. So we eventually broke up, and shortly after I realized I was still in love with him. I'd made a horrible mistake, and so I managed to get him back, and then he ended up having an intervention of sorts that night. He got sober the next day. He went into rehab.
My gosh.
So we were together for another year, but all we did was, we just drifted apart. You can't have an alcoholic and a sober guy. That just doesn't work.
Not at all.
That's eventually what did us in.
And the last question is, how did you get rid of your addiction? How did you recover from your addictions?
Well, I had to hit a pretty low bottom. Once we broke up, I really I felt so empty, and like I said, I had no identity. I just decided to kill myself. So I decided to drink myself to death, and I spent 2 years actively doing that. It was a very, very dark period of my life, and I came very, very close. I was in and out of the hospital. I was very sick. I was bloated and yellow, and I thought I was going to die one day, and I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. All I could do was lay there and think, is this what I want to do? And I thought, well, I don't think it's what I meant to do. I really did believe that suicide was a cop-out, and it was time for me to stand on my own 2 feet, whatever that meant, however hard it was. And I made some calls. I had some sober friends, some strippers in Vegas, and I got a lot of support. And the next thing I knew, life got better.
All right, that could be people definitely need to pick up your book to find out the whole story. I am Facebook friends with you, so I'm going to find out more of the story and probably have a part 2 or part 3 because I have the time. But Kristen, where's the best place we can purchase your book? Amazon and all finer bookstores, but there's 2 websites we can go to find out info on you. Is that correct?
Well, my author site is Kristen Casey Author, and that's Kristen with an I-N, not E-N. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Book People, which is Austin's largest independent bookstore, and they have signed copies. There are links on my site, KristenCaseyAuthor.com. My Twitter handle is Ms. Kristen Casey. That's MS Kristen Casey. And my Facebook page, of course. But anywhere that books are sold, it's on shelves. It's on Amazon, Audible. It's available there as well.
All right, Kristen, thanks for calling. Best of luck, and I look forward to talking to you off air sometime, so take care. Thanks. Okay, bye. You're listening to Neil Haley's Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show in the Total Celebrity segment. And when I heard I had the chance to interview this person, I said, my gosh, she is just one of the most amazing people in the world, the way she stands up to people. And it taught me so much when I'm an educational advocate and I go in and fight school districts for students with autism, special needs. I know that somebody that never backs down. This is the person that never backs down. So I'm excited to welcome to the program Nancy Grace. Nancy, thanks for calling. We're going to talk about the A&E original series Grace versus Abrams. But Nancy, you are just an inspiration to so many people that you are going to fight tooth and nail to get what you want, especially when it's going to help somebody who's in need. Thanks again for calling.
Well, I'm just so floored by your kind introduction. I'm really thankful and grateful for you inviting me on, and I'm just so grateful and thankful also for A&E series that starts Thursday night. And my goal, as it has always been since I became a victim of violent crime myself many years ago, to help crime victims. So if I could stop one crime victim from going through what I and so many others went through, the whole thing would have been worth it.
It definitely would have, and that's the thing, what you went through. But did you have that stand up, I'm not going to take anything action growing up before that happened to you? Did you have that same attitude in a way?
Oh, my goodness, no, not at all. I would not raise my hand in class. I was the third of three children. I did as I was told. I tried anything I could do to make my parents happy and never spoke out ever. And had a very happy, although we were, let me just put it bluntly, poor.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I had a very happy, almost idyllic childhood in rural Georgia growing up on a red dirt road. It was only after my fiancé was murdered shortly before our wedding, and I was in school to become a Shakespearean literature professor. I dropped out of school. I lost down to about 89 pounds. I didn't care anymore whether I lived or died, and I ultimately went back to school with the goal of going to law school to become a felony prosecutor. I was greatly inspired by the book To Kill a Mockingbird and the character Atticus Finch. And I know that may sound corny to a lot of people, but it helped form my opinion about how one person can make a difference. That has not changed over the years. And it was really only after I had not law school, not my first couple of jobs as I was trying to get onto the DA's office, but after I tried my very first jury trial, I came out on the sidewalk after court, and I felt like a bird out of a cage because finally, after all that, I felt I could speak. And that was in 1997.
And what you've done, Nancy, is been able to take so many cases that you had to speak out on, especially when you saw that it was not going the right direction, put it out on your show, and it changed things dramatically. It really put a highlight to that, and you fought for the victims. And I'm sure when you go and speak or meet other people, they thank you all the time for what you've done.
Well, I appreciate that. A lot of people identify with our program because they too have been victims, not necessarily crime victim, but sometimes crime victims, sometimes victims of harassment or mistreatment. men and women and children alike. And very often people feel they don't have a voice. It was in 87 I started prosecuting. 97 that I went to Court TV to launch a show with Johnny Cochran, God rest his soul.
Oh, wow.
And I never dreamed growing up that I would ever, I mean, we had one TV in our home. It got one channel, CBS, that's all it could pick up, and one U channel, which turned out to be the Superstation, Channel 17, which became CNN. That's all we could get. So I never grew up really watching TV, much less dreaming of having a TV career. That just was not anything I ever considered.
Definitely. And it just happened. And again, it's based on something really horrible happening to you in your life, but you were able to make that and change your life forever and change the lives of others. So sometimes when these tough tragedies happen, they happen for a reason, and we have to step up and understand why we go through this and move forward and try to make something out of it, right? That's the thing of being a victim. That,
you know what, you're right. You try to make something good out of something horrible. Yes, you're right.
Absolutely. Again, we're talking to Nancy Grace.
And
now
I'm
she's
hoping that's what we're doing on our program.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk.
That's what we're doing on our program.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. So again, we're talking to Nancy Grace on the Neil Haley Show about the A&E original series, Grace versus Abrams. So you have a relationship with Abrams in certain ways, and explain that whole thing, and from people who have watched the show and specifically, and now you're joining forces to fight crime. So tell us about that.
Well, I don't know that I would say I'm joining forces with Dan Abrams. I would say it's more like not Grace and Abrams, it's Grace versus Abrams, where we take on the biggest cases and investigations, ongoing investigations our country has ever seen, and the most notorious. And we break them down, put them back together again with a live studio audience who gives their ideas, their questions, their theories as well. Plus, of course, Dan and I are arguing the whole time. But aside from that, witnesses and evidence that were not produced at trial that I really believe would have changed the outcome of the verdict.
And this is what you love to do. And now, especially with all these investigation channels and different things and uncovering mysteries, now you can finally make a difference in these cases. And that's your passion. And now, based on this show, you can really, again, transform and change people's lives, especially victims, so that the culprit gets caught, right? That's the goal.
I really hope it does make a difference. Some of the cases are precluded from retrial because of double jeopardy. However, there are a lot of recourses. My main goal is not revenge on anyone. My main goal is for the truth to be known, and my own way getting a true verdict on these cases, regardless of what a jury may or may not have done.
Wow. And are some of these cases pretty familiar to us, Nancy, that you'll be covering?
Some are, yes. Like I taught Mom Casey Anthony, Drew Peterson, whose fourth wife, Stacy's still missing. I believe she's dead, regardless of what he says. Chandra Levy, whose killer has walked scot-free.
Oh, my.
I mean, the list is really endless. Robert Blake's wife, Bonnie Lee Bakley, was gunned down, practically under the noses of the public, and no killer has gone to jail for that. I mean, they're cases that really stick in your craw.
And you and Dan are going to butt heads at times, for sure, because you have different ideas, as we all know from him coming on your show all the time, right? So, yeah.
I've never known us to agree on anything. But that's what the adversarial system is. That's what our justice system is, the state versus the defense. And that's why you have direct and cross-exam, so you can test the evidence and the witnesses with the fire of cross. And hopefully, at the end of the day, you get the purified result, which is the truth.
Absolutely. The purified result, which is the truth. And that's what you stand for, and that's what you expect. And sometimes Dan's looking at basically a way of, looking at specifically how he can win. And it's all about winning against you, right? That's what's going to be so fun at this show, is that back and forth, but also...
Yeah, his angle is how to protect the defendant under the Constitution and test the evidence from the defense point of view.
So it's kind of like, let me give you a similar thing. When I go in against these school districts, they just try to stick to the law and how they don't have to spend money. And I fight to make sure that it's best for my client, that they're going to win and that the child's going to get the best services possible. And maybe sometimes I try to fight it where maybe I wouldn't win, but I think of the child and say, this should happen, and I'm going to stand up to that. And that's what you do as well. Instead of what Dan looks at is the law, the law, the law. There's no, it's black and white, end of discussion, right?
You know, it's hard sometimes to keep on keeping on. I hear what you're saying. It is hard sometimes, but there's something bigger than me, bigger than you, and that is what is right. It's what is right and what is true and what is good. And I believe in that. You know, people say, what do you think about the jail system? What do you think about defense attorneys? This and that. Yeah, there's bad in every scenario. But I really believe for the most part that people are good. And that's what I keep in the back of my mind, that I'm trying to do something good.
All right, so everyone needs to tune in March 29th, 11 p.m. Eastern. And where can we follow you and stuff, Nancy? Where's the best place we can connect with you?
Oh, yes. My website is crimeonline.com.
Okay.
And on Sirius XM 132. And I'm super grateful that you invited me on today. And I'm a huge fan of what you do and the causes that you champion.
Thank you.
A big, huge fan, and thank you. This means a lot to me. And I'll see you on A&E Thursday night at 11 Eastern, and I can't wait to hear your response come Friday morning.
All right, sounds good, Nancy. Thanks for calling, and best of luck. And you're welcome to come on anytime to promote the show or anything you're doing on Sirius or all that. So thanks again for calling. Appreciate it. Okay. Cool.
Thank you, buddy.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. You're listening to Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hey, look at me. I'm the color of the season. You and me together, we would be awesome. We would kill it at the club. You can get me at the Designer Bag Bingo.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show in the Total Celebrity segment, and I'm excited to welcome the program. I loved him as Jefferson Darcy. I loved him in Revenge of the Nerds. I've loved him in all these different things. The Love Boat. Ted McGinley. Ted, thanks for calling. We're going to talk about God's Not Dead, A Light in Darkness. Ted, how are you? And thanks for calling.
Great, Neil. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Great to be with you, and I'm happy that you're willing to talk about our movie.
Absolutely. I mean, just think about the first movie and the success of it, Ted. To be asked to be part of the second one has got to be phenomenal for you, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, it's the guy that the first one that took off had this young kid, Shane, who was in the movie, and Shane Harper is reprising his role in this one, in the third one. One, you don't have to see any of the movies before to enjoy this particular one. That it's a total standalone movie. But Shane Harper has reprised his role, which made me want to come in because I thought I loved him in one opposite Kevin Sorbo. It was a great combo. And so, you know, I love working for this company. PureFlix is a very honest, cool stand-up company, and I've done a couple movies for them, and they're good people, and they're great to work for.
So it's a different thing, Ted, in that situation, getting yourself involved in working for PureFlix and stuff, and then being part of this brand. You know how many fans are out there that love God's Not Dead? I mean, it's a huge following, isn't it?
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, you know, as I've traveled around a little bit with the movie, we've had a couple really cool screenings, and you do hear that. You know, the thing that Hollywood kind of has ignored for a long time is there's a group of people who have a strong faith, who want to see movies that represent their life too. You know, and they don't hate the other movies. Doesn't mean you have to be judgmental or hate the other movies. It just means, hey, we're here, and we want to see some movies about our lives, and we want to see ourselves, and we want to see what our faith looks like. And this particular movie is holding up a mirror to current-day society and what's going on in the United States, politically,
yes,
and with people's faith, etc. I mean, there's a lot going on in this film. Social media, it covers a lot of ground, and it covers it well. But yeah, there's a hungry audience that's waiting for these faith-based films because, you know, they've kind of been ignored for a long time.
And Ted, you getting involved with PureFlix and stuff like that, is there certain underlying reasons that you got connected with them, or your faith and stuff, for being part of this?
Well, I have done. This is my fourth movie with them, actually, and so, you know, I love that PureFlix walks the walk. They were making faith-based movies before they were making money. They were just doing it because they thought it was the right thing for them to do. And now Hollywood has sort of discovered, oh, hey, we can make some money making a faith-based movie, but they don't have, you know, this audience can smell a fraud right away, and that's kind of cool. I love that, and it's rare that, you know. Yes, of course, I grew up with a very strong sense of faith, and so it's fun to have something that coincides with my own personal beliefs that I get to work on. I mean, you know, I'm kind of a gun for hire. I have to kind of go whoever will hire me, as long as it's, you know, with something I can live with myself doing. And this is just that great opportunity where you get to do something you're really proud of, and that you hope speaks to a lot of people that are looking forward to this kind of message.
Absolutely. And it's something, Ted, that it blows you away to say, here's my faith, but you said it's a gun for hire. But what does Hollywood say about this? And that's the thing. Now you're working other deals as well and saying, hey, I'm part of this, and this is a great deal. And we're also talking to people, hey, you should consider being in a film for PureFlix, for sure, as a good spokesperson.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the truth. There used to be, I think, some sort of negative stigma attached to it. And I think that with, you know, Dennis Quaid has a film out right now that's doing very well. It's a faith-based film. A lot of Greg Kinnear. I mean, there's been a lot of, you know, stars that have been in these movies, and Hollywood just has to sort of, you know, deal with it. And they're doing well, and so yeah, you're seeing more and more people not worry about the stigma and kind of jump in. There's a lot of people who want to tell these stories. The idea
yes.
of this particular movie, God's Not Dead, A Light in Darkness, is not to make... At the end of this, you want to say, like, if you had a different point of view than me, or if you felt a different way, if you were an atheist, whatever it is, that you're not a villain in this movie. No one's making you a villain in this movie. In this movie, we just want you to say, hopefully at the end of it, you know what, my point of view was fairly represented, and I didn't come off like some sort of stupid monster. I was respected in how I was portrayed, and you know, we're just all going to kind of disagree. How do we make this work? How do we get along? And how do we live in grace?
It's so true. And so what should we... You said we can see this film, Ted, and not have to see the other films, and understand and benefit from this, not have to catch up with the other ones. Yeah, this movie stands alone. You don't have to be familiar with one or two. You don't have to know anything about them. And John Corbett from Northern Exposure and Sex and the City is co-starring with David A.R. White in this film.
and he walks away with the film. If you're a John Corbett fan, you have to see this movie.
All right, Ted, we don't want to give away much, but people need to definitely, it's in theaters tomorrow nationwide, and the best place we can find information on you, Ted, is where can we go?
Oh, for information on me, IMDb. That's about it. I don't really do I have social media stuff, I guess, but I don't really do it. You could follow me on Instagram, or I don't even know what my names are. I don't really do it. I refuse to play the game. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you wanted to find out anything about me, just go to IMDb, and then wait for the next time I'm on the radio. I like the fact that I'm sort of I'm just out of everything.
That's a great point for sure, Ted. Well, thanks again for calling, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Neil.
All right, take care. Thanks. Bye. You're listening to the Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.
My honor, I would do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, morally straight.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show on the Total Celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome to the program Michael Esper of FX TV's Trust, or should I say Donnie Pomp. Michael, thanks for calling. How are you?
I'm really good, man. I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, tell me how big social media blew up when people found out about Donnie's relationship. How did that go when that happened? Because my mouth dropped, my wife's mouth dropped. We love Shades of Blue, but kind of explain that. That had to have been one of your greatest roles ever, just because of how popular that show is and who you had the relationship with.
Yeah, man, it was wild. I mean, it's hard to see it coming, you know. I mean, I don't think it's something you expect from like Ray Liotta, or that you get to see that much on a show like that. And I thought it was so cool that I thought it was so cool they built that relationship that way, and I had a lot of fun doing it, man. It was wild.
And then when you died, how many people were upset that you were dead? Or is Donnie still alive?
I don't know.
Find out in a couple of years.
I mean, the way I died on that show was so amazing, too. I feel like I got killed like 5 different times in one episode. It was so amazing. Right, they like stabbed me, and then I got shot, and then I got like burned in a furnace. It's like they really killed me hard on it.
They didn't like you, Donnie. They didn't like you, Michael, for sure. And that is it.
I was a bad guy.
Yeah, you were a bad guy. For sure, and success to Shades of Blue, love it, and all that stuff. But your new project, congratulations on the role as the lead in this, and again, a great story for sure. When you were approached about this project, how excited were you?
I mean, you can't help but be just out of your mind with excitement. I mean, just the people involved alone. I mean, Danny Boyle, Simon Beaufoy, and Donald Sutherland, Hilary Swank. It's just this crazy murderer's row of talent on board, and then knowing what the show was about, and the more I learned about the character and the story, I really fell in love with the guy. I really got fascinated with him and with the family, and I just couldn't believe I got to play the part and be on the show and work with those people. It was so wild.
We're talking to Michael Esper of FX TV's Trust on the Neil Haley Show. And so tell us about your character and the story, because, again, it looks at wealth in so many ways and how people are so unhappy. There has to be a great mix. If you have wealth, you need to be happy, or you need to change what you're doing and live your passion. I hated seeing specifically, Michael, someone posting on social media, I think it was Mark Cuban, a quote saying that you shouldn't be, if you have passion about your life, your job, then you shouldn't be doing it, which is terrible, because that, with passion, leads to happiness.
Yeah, that's a very hard concept for me to get behind and understand. It seems like, I don't know, I mean, it seems like being devoted to what you do and really loving it, and I mean, that's where all the reward is, you know what I mean? Like, that's one of the keys to happiness as far as I'm concerned. And part of the problem with these guys, you know, is that they have all this, with this family, is, you know, a lot of them, they have all this wealth, but they have nothing to engage in. You know, they have nothing to, like, really put their hearts into. You know, they have no like, work for themselves that they can really care about, no overarching, like, project in their lives. And so a lot of them are lost. They have all this agency in one sense, you know, because of the wealth and the power that it brings and the access that it brings, but they have no, like, occupation. They have nothing to, like, they have no receptacle for their passion, you know. They have nothing to, like, drive and focus who they are. And so as a result, you know, like, a lot of the characters just are deeply lost people. You know, they're confused about, there's a big confusion in the show with, like, wealth, between, like, wealth and love, wealth and happiness, and you know, that those two things can get conflated and can be the same thing, but, you know, it's just not true. It's a disastrous mix-up to me.
Again, Michael Esper of FX TV's Trust on the Neil Haley Show. So it's about, you play J. Paul Getty Jr. And so explain again, this is all about the story of the Gettys and your character, and then also a little bit about the story for people who don't understand the Gettys, or in certain ways. I was talking to my mom, and I brought up that I was interviewing today, and she said she never watched Shades of Blue. Then I brought up, I said, the show, and she has heard really good things about it. So again, when my mom says that, she really keeps up on what the pop culture is going in. So I know that's the thing. So tell us about that, because that's the kind of thing I like to tune into, history like this.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, you know, that I didn't know all that much about. I mean, I knew about the Getty family, you know, the Gettys, at one time the richest family in the world, built this huge oil dynasty. The patriarch, played by Donald Sutherland, built this incredible oil dynasty out of nothing. And the family themselves, I play his son, J. Paul Getty Jr., and my grandson in the 70s, he's living in Italy. My son, his grandson, is living in Italy in the 70s, and he gets kidnapped. And the way the family handles it, you know, the controversy surrounding the kidnapping. You know, at one point, Donald Sutherland's character refuses to pay the ransom. You know, there's speculation about how legitimate the kidnapping is. I mean, the story itself is just really incredible. The way these people live is really incredible. Donald Sutherland's character lives in this huge estate outside of London with a harem of women, you know, which is true. And it's just really, it's really insane. And because the show is so... No, go on, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you keep going. Go ahead.
Well, because we have 10 episodes, the show can really delve into, you know, each character's backstory, and you know, you can really get into the humanity of each member of the family, and, you know, sort of how and why they're screwed up and their own point of view about what's going on, and start to understand why they behave the way they do. You know, what on the surface may seem really outrageous, you know.
I mean, it's terrible. You look at wealth, and I hope someday to accumulate some sort of that wealth as an entrepreneur, but I don't want it to be where I'm completely unhappy. I have to be able to live my balance in life, and so many people always are not happy with where they are. They always want to go bigger and higher level, And that's just a big problem, Michael, is that they want to be so, and they don't care, and they forget about people. They look at them all as things. And that's what we're going to hear about in the story, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I think that wealth is dangerous, both as an outside force and as an internal one, and I think the show really, really digs into that in a way that's really cool, and the storytelling on the show is so cool. I mean, Danny Boyle is he's such a sick director, and the show really, you really feel him in the show. It's really cool to watch.
Well, I appreciate you definitely taking the time. We definitely have to reach out and chat again sometime. When I told my wife I was interviewing, she was so excited about it because she said, I remember completely. And maybe you're not dead. You never know. Keep saying, look at how this show goes, and they could have faked your death 5 times.
Hey,
Michael,
bring back Donnie Pomp.
Bring back Donnie Pomp. # bring back Donnie Pomp. Again, 10 p.m. Eastern on FX on Sundays. We can check out Michael. And where, social media-wise, can we check you out, Michael?
I'm Airstream Rally on Twitter. You can find me there.
Okay, fantastic, Michael. Well, thanks for calling. Best of luck, and thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
One of the things we do at BPTV is encourage our producers to film on location. Not only does shooting on location give our producers the opportunity to take advantage of their subject matter, filming in different locations gives each program its own distinct flavor. This also helps anyone who's flipping through the channels avoid confusion when they turn on BPTV. With around 500 programs produced at BPTV each year, the last thing we want people to think is that we're only broadcasting one program. So, you need to come into BPTV to pitch your TV show, but in terms of where you actually end up taping your show, the sky's the limit.